This video is from the 2018 LA Barstow to Vegas dual sport ride with District 37, which, as the name suggests, goes between LA. You stop in Barstow overnight, and then the next day you ride from Barstow to Vegas. Almost all of it's off-road through the desert, and that's really why I was out here. So I'm riding a KTM 790 Adventure R, and this was part of my preparation for the Merzouga Rally in Morocco as part of the KTM Ultimate Race. I'm from the Midwest. There's no desert in the Midwest, and the race in Morocco is all in the desert. So this was part of my training in trying to figure out how to ride in the sand, how to ride at high speed. So we got a little bit of a late start. I had some issues with the bike. Just getting to the start of the event is about an hour and a half road ride to get there. The 790 has fuel taps on the bottom of each side of the tank, and when I was riding to the start of the event, the fuel gauge read full and I ran out. It coughed and sputtered and died on the highway, and I couldn't keep going, and my buddy there had to come rescue me, come save me with a gas can. So it turned out that one of those fuel taps was turned off, and I could have just turned it on and got the bike running again, apparently. I had tried leaning it over on its side, and that didn't work. So my buddy riding the 950 Super Enduro came and rescued me. And so now we were trying to make up time, knowing we had a lot of miles to cover before we got to Barstow. We got to see some of the kind of back end of the crowd struggling through the sand, and there were bikes crashed everywhere. And then I'm riding along, and this guy on a cut-down Super Tenere with a safari tank and a Rotopax on each side of the front on crash bars, just struggling through the sand with all that weight on the front. Unfortunately, my buddy cooked the moose in his rear tire when he was riding on the highway to come bring me gas, so we had to stop and swap a tube out that I had with me. As with a lot of the big bikes, the 790 does great on a lot of this two-track stuff. The thing that blew me away is the suspension is actually good from the factory. Most adventure bikes are soft and they're comfortable on the road. As soon as you start trying to push them off-road, you're just blowing through travel and bottoming out. This bike's all stock suspension. It's just a 790R. There's nothing special done to it. And it took all kinds of hits, did great, didn't break anything, didn't bend any rims. It was really, really nice ride.
Yeah, we're at number 226.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. The engine on the 790 is a parallel twin with a 270-degree crank, so it's got a little bit more of the V-twin character to it. I really did like the engine, but it's so quiet that the exhaust is so quiet that it makes the engine sound like it has a lot of rattles and mechanical noise. The 790 does have all the traction control and everything else. I ran in rally mode the whole time with traction. I played with the traction control a bunch, but in general I liked it on the lowest setting.
those whoops are just brutal. Oh.
So stop and reset. I'm like 0.6 above.
Yeah, it's way off for me.
I didn't include the video of the whoops because it's pretty boring watching somebody just kind of roll a big bike through whoops that are, you know, too big to hit hard or too big for, you know, this guy to hit hard, and kind of skip across. But it was exhausting and is on any bike where you're just kind of rolling through the bottom and up over the top for miles. As we kept going towards the end of the first day, we ran into some issues with the road book or the enduro roll chart where the mileage was off, and we got kind of lost a couple times, including right here. When we got to the top of this climb, we realized, oh, we're probably in the right place. We were off by a half mile, and you know, this was the first time that we'd kind of gotten off trail since the reset, so not sure if we did something wrong, but it was kind of a consistent thing that both of our bikes were off by quite a bit.
Seems right.
Yeah.
I guess. That doesn't, I don't get the road book here.
And dude, I'm off by a half mile.
Yeah, I'm off by
259, I'm off by a half mile.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was it.
You'll see I do have my Garmin Montana on the handlebars. It wasn't powered by the bike, and by now the battery was long dead, so we were relying entirely on the roll chart and kind of. So I mentioned my buddy is riding a 950 Super Enduro, which anyone who has had one or a 950 Adventure will know that those carbs suffer from float bounce when you're pounding through kind of lower frequency, higher amplitude whoops. And that's exactly what we were doing here. So, you know, we're rolling along, and if you don't keep the RPM up high, you know, use handfuls of throttle every once in a while, the bike will just suddenly die on you as it floods out. And that's exactly what happened right here.
I'll be happy if I never see another whoop again.
We did get back pretty well after dark. The 790's got a pretty solid factory headlight on it. Now this is with the high beam on. The downside was, at least on this bike, the headlight only has a bottom stop, so it kind of sits against the adjuster stop. And as you go over bumps, the headlight bounces, and you get this kind of flickery effect of it bouncing in the housing. On day 2, of course, we took all the hard lines. This was right at the beginning. This kind of technical riding is stuff that I love doing. Right, it would have been really no problem for me on the 950 because I'm so comfortable with that bike after 90,000 miles. The cable clutch, the fact that it's cable, not a problem. The challenge that I have with it is the engagement zone is very narrow. The engine has very, very little, rotational inertia. It stalls kind of easy, just like any emission engine now, really. And it's ride-by-wire. The throttle is entirely electronic, and there's no direct link between your hand and the throttle. So it's something that I think, if I owned the bike, if I rode it a lot, I'd definitely get used to it. But being used to direct actuated throttle plates and carburetor slides, I really struggled with it in the technical stuff.
Wheel bearings are good. Not rubbing the...
Your fender's rubbing, but...
Yeah, it always does. Well, I can't find anything large and mechanical and scary, so... I got to put my earplug in.
Sean.
Sean, I'm Jordan.
West Coast event specialist. I was with Mike Lafferty and all those guys and Quinn and
Okay.
set up all the courses and all that shit. So
I gotcha.
congratulations,
Awesome.
man.
Yeah,
See, obviously they gave you a bike, which is cool.
Yeah.
To play with.
Just so you know, that bike's supposed to be mine.
That's what everybody's been saying.
And I rode one a couple weeks ago down in Anza-Borrego.
Yeah.
Freaking love it, man. How do you
Yeah.
like it? Tell me the truth.
It's
Small.
so I'm more excited about it now that I've ridden it than I was before because I love my 950.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
So
But
it's kind of hard to adjust, huh?
yeah, I mean, there's things that are different. Of course, it's fuel injected and has all the electronics and all that stuff. But it's
How does it feel though to take so low?
it's good. It's only a problem because you forget that it's still a heavy bike until you wash the front end out or land it off of something and land wrong.
Yeah. It feels like a kind of a big dual sport bike when you're moving, right?
Yeah.
That was my opinion, but you're right. The weight does come back to get you sometimes.
Yeah, you just have to remember it's still there.
That's the display they're gonna come with?
Yeah.
Yep.
It really does feel like a big dual sport bike. I weighed this one. It was 461 pounds with a full tank of gas, and it carries a bit more weight over the rear wheel than the front, actually, and that makes it real easy to lift the front wheel up. It definitely hooks up and gets traction a little bit better, more consistently than the 950 does. The bike doesn't have the inherent sand stability. I think because the bike works so well on pavement, there's got to be some geometry trade-offs there. Where when you're riding in really soft sand, it's pretty wandery. Where the 950 feels rock solid even without a steering damper. Of course, this is, sand comments from someone who doesn't really ride sand often or is not particularly adept at it. This area was I believe it was by Dumont Dunes. It was interesting riding a bike with an engine this quiet. You can hear the tire kind of grabbing for traction. You can hear the chain. You can hear the transmission. Every time you kind of jump in the air or slam through some ripples, you can hear the suspension working.
Amazing.
It's definitely a different experience than the pretty throaty 950. The bike does have, we weren't riding in mud or super slow stuff, but it has a good size radiator. It's got 2 fans on it. I never had a problem, 10 gauge never moved at all. Never had a problem with overheating. But, you're always moving in this kind of stuff. One of the things about big bikes is momentum is key. So, through this whole, rocky section, I'm trying pretty hard to keep moving. You know, you just keep it in either second gear and use the clutch, or first gear and keep it kind of spinning, get that engine gyroscopic force helping you out. I rode up and then got hung up on a rock and had to turn around and come back. You know, get to see that in the video. Pretty unspectacular. And then I just struggled with that clutch and that throttle, trying to get the thing to hook up to get enough speed to throw it at that rock. I never quite got the feel for it, and I know Camel ADV makes a clutch extension that'll help with that. That's something that I would try on a personal bike, just to get a wider engagement zone. I think that would probably do it, but definitely something even 2 years later that I do remember thinking, okay, if this was my bike, I would modify this to behave a little different. This was in the Red Rock area of just outside of Vegas, and you know, I didn't really know how close I was to the end, but I knew, one, that I was losing daylight, and two, you know, learning how to ride fast in the desert, kind of on the fly. I was pretty worn out. Definitely ready to be sitting down, drinking a nice cold beer, eating some food. But the bike did great. Didn't break anything. I did tip it over a couple times. No bent rims, no flat tires. The suspension held up great. I definitely slammed it into the backside of some whoops and, you know, mistimed a few things as I was trying to figure out what I was doing. It took it all in stride and, you know, saved me from myself a few times. I beat myself up a lot for dropping bikes, especially other people's bikes. So after dropping the 790 on those rocks, I was definitely playing it back over and over in my head, thinking, oh crap, what could I have done different?
Nice work through there.
Oh man, that was sloppy through that, where you caught up.
Is this on camera?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was sloppy.